Shalom, shalom. It's the brother Yahweh Shapat coming at you with another lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shah, by Hashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to my apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone who teach and rule well in these scriptures, and peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Amen. And this lesson is going to be entitled, The MOTB is a hot topic right now, and especially among brothers at GMS and brothers who are, affiliated, through the same doctrine, through the spirit and power of Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shah. You had a famous actor. I'm not sure if he's Northern Kingdom for sure. The guy came out and pretty much was, I'm not sure if he was on LinkedIn. Matter of fact, let me see real quick. Bear with me, I can Baba Shah. Let's see if I can look him up real quick. Look up the cast of Training Day, because he was in Training Day. He was in a lot of movies, man. You know what I'm saying? Pretty well-known guy. I'm not sure if like I said, I'm not sure what podcast he was on. It looked like it was Drink Champs. He pretty much went on there and was going into how, his name is Noel Guilemi. Noel Guilemi. So, like I said, pretty well-known guy. I think he was on a podcast, and he was basically going into how the elite, using gradualism, have been getting everybody prepared for the MOTB. But he also made a point to point out that we all got chips in our phone, we got chips in our credit cards, bank cards, and stuff like that. But that ain't the MOTB. He was going into Salaki. He was going into how the MOTB, is going to give the elites total control over you in every, facet of life. You know what I'm saying? Your credit score is going to be tied to that. What you can buy and can't buy is going to be tied to that. And your ability to use that is going to be tied to your obedience to the beast, to your obedience to this system that this man is getting ready to set up, through the power that he's been given on the left-hand side. So, like I said, I ain't going to pull the interview up or anything like that, but he was basically going into how, they're pretty much getting you used to tapping and swiping. You know what I'm saying? Tapping, or, basically it's what we call gradualism, and that's what the elite use. He basically went into how pretty much they're gonna introduce it as a way to make life easier, and a lot of people are gonna take it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people are gonna take it. A lot of you Israelites out there that don't have any, you're not grounded in this thing, or you're not grounded in Yahweh B'Ashem Yahweh Shah, period, you're gonna take it. A lot of you women out there are gonna take it because you gotta, your first instinct is gonna be that you gotta feed your kids. But when the mark of the beast gets implemented and made mandatory, the elect are gonna be living off faith. The hopeful elect are gonna live by their faith. And we we got faith that the Lord gonna feed us, man. The scriptures say we gonna be fed. If you take that chip and you're an Israelite, you're a so-called Negro, Latino, or Native American, there is surely nothing but death that awaits you. So let me look up the definition for gradualism real quick. And it says, a policy of gradual reform rather than sudden change or revolution. Apostle Tahar pretty much, was saying they know they can't just, you know, start making everybody take the chip. But what they're going to do is they're setting up a system to where it's basically like, it's like, the smartphone is connected to a system. You can't people like flip phones because they were simple, but everything has become so complex, you cannot walk around here without a smartphone. Even if you're going to buy a cheap track phone or something, you got to have a smartphone. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't, it's just a lot of shit that you can't do with a flip phone. They had an article out, and it was going into how some people were trying to use flip phones, but they ended up going back to smartphones because they realized flip phones have been phased out systematically. It's just certain shit that you can't do on a flip phone that you're required. Living today, in today's time, the system that we have, everything's so advanced, you're required to have a smartphone. Like I said, even if you're going to go the cheap route, get your track phone, little $20, $30 phone, you still got to have a smartphone. That being said, Esau's going to curate his system to where, you're going to eventually have to take the chip. They're not just going to come out and start forcing people to take it, but they're going to make a system. They're going to set up a system to where it's like, hey, it's going to come down to a point where you have no choice but to take it. This is Revelation chapter 13 and verse 16. And he causeth, the key word here is he causeth. Esau's going to make it to where, he's going to cause everybody to have to take that chip if they want to be in this system. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Cash and coins are going to be completely phased out. There'll be no more of that. No more under the table jobs, no more getting paid under the table, no more buying things without it all being tracked and monitored under their under their system. So, it's going to come to a point where it's thousands of people, that maybe millions. It's an innumerable amount of people that already had that chip. Some of them here in the United States, some of them in other countries. But it hasn't been made mandatory. What Revelation 13 and 16 is going into is how eventually it's going to be made mandatory. And that's what Noel was speaking on. I believe that everybody's pretty much going to, if you're of the lower class, you're going to get that hand chip. Now, if you got some money, you a little bit, if you on the rich side or the wealthy side, you probably end up with the brain chip. Either way, if you take it, hell, you screwed. The scriptures talk about how a grievous sore fell upon those who had the mark. That's because that chip's going to cause radiation. It's going to give you a sore. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, man, but the MOTB is a hot topic, And like I was going into about, you can't use a flip phone in today's time. It's just not, it's inconvenient. And they're going to make it to where it's inconvenient for you to not have that chip. Elder Pastor Hart, he's always, since I started seeing the apostle back in 2016. I started teaching around like 2018. But, for a while, I was just watching the videos. And, what I always remember the apostle saying is that once that chip gets made mandatory, that's when all hell is going to break loose. That's one of the main prophecies that we waiting to pop off. And, hey, man, it could happen. It's going to happen in the Lord's time. But the Lord could speed. He's already speeding things up. That chip could be made mandatory next year. It could be made mandatory by the end of this year. You know what I'm saying? That's why we all, we watching. And, that guy's, he's an actor. he's a lesser luminary. You know, all of them know what's going on. You know, they get debriefed on these things. Even your you know, your drill rappers that have made it far, your NBA young boys, you know, your regular everyday Jake rappers. You know, Offset and the Migos, they had this music video where they was pretty much they had a missile and it said USSR on it. And I'm like, man, you can't tell me that they don't know you know, that eventually Russia's gonna nuke America. A lot of these guys with a lot of money, you know, a lot of these actors, actresses, they don't even live here anymore. They don't work here anymore. Jay-Z and Beyonce moved out of the country, if I ain't mistaken. And, you know, those are just two people that are famous and pretty well known to name a few. A lot of them, they don't even live here anymore. That's because they already, they know what's going to happen. You know, they know shit's going to hit the fan in America very, very soon. But, you know, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close out with that. You know, I didn't plan on this lesson being too long, but I did want to speak on what he said. You know, and I might go and watch the interview, I might not, you know, but hey, these actors and actresses, they know what's going to happen. You know, they, like I said, man, they've been debriefed on what's going on, you know. So I'm going to close out with that. You know, all praise, honor, and glory is due to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai for putting the spirit on me to do this lesson. Lord willing, this is edifying, and until the next one, Shalom.